Now Adolf Hitler stood just as Napoleon had stood more than 100 years before.
As Britain prepared to fight to the death, thousands of Polish servicemen came here, the last free country in Europe.
We knew that England would continue fighting, you see, and we could sort of join them.
They had fled their homeland and crossed Europe. Now the Poles had only one desire: to fight the Germans.
Our country was defeated. We wanted it back. The commitment was total.
The Poles were eager to fight. Britain was short of pilots. There was just one problem.
Next.
None of them spoke the language.
The only English words we knew were yes and no. The only problem was knowing which to use.
Jan Zumbach had qualified as a pilot 2 years earlier and already seen action in France.
Have you typhus?
He described the obstacles he and his fellow airmen faced in his memoir.
Have you migraine?
We were continually at cross purposes with the British officials.
Have you TB?
A friend of mine had just about run out of patience when one doctor solemnly inquired,
Have you had VD?
Had VD? Had VD? What's that?
So he took a chance, answered
Yes.
and was promptly hauled off for a vigorous massage of the prostate.
Examination, please.
But they couldn't understand what we were saying, and I'm quite certain we couldn't understand what they were saying, because I myself didn't know a word of English.
And that was a great barrier, both socially and, more important, operationally.
But Britain was desperate. On July the 22nd, 303 Polish Squadron was formed at London's RAF Northolt. To overcome the language barrier, its pilots were placed under English-speaking commanders. Captain John Kent, an experienced Canadian pilot, recalled his reaction at having to chaperone the Poles in his autobiography.
It was just about the last straw to find myself posted to a foreign squadron that had not even been formed. I was thoroughly fed up and despondent.
Kent wasn't alone in his view.
Hello, boys!
They didn't think we really have any stomach for fight anymore. That we are a spent force, and that we are an embarrassment and a burden.
Out of all the Poles, only 2 of them had any English at all.
Kent's commanding officer was Ronald Kellett. It was his job to turn 303 into a fighting force.
The men are being taught basic operational vocabulary.
All I know about the Polish Air Force is that they lasted 3 days against the Luftwaffe.
Well, let's hope we can make them shine more brightly operating from England.
Time was running out. Germany's high command wanted to complete the invasion of Britain before the winter set in. In early August, the Luftwaffe intensified its mission to destroy Britain's defences. The Germans had 2,500 aircraft. The RAF just over 600.
Angels!
Angels! Meanwhile, Zumbach and his fellow pilots were confined to the classroom.
Pancake!
Every morning, a bus would take us 10 miles to Uxbridge to learn the basic vocabulary which would be coming over the earphones.
Pancake!
Angels for thousands of feet altitude.
Angels!
Pancake for landing.
Pancake!
Bandits for enemy planes, and so on.
The angel, it's the height. You see, those in thousands, usually.
Bandits!
Bandits!
After 3 or 4 weeks of very intense classes, my vocabulary was good enough to, say, read a paper, but I couldn't pronounce it.
Captain John Kent came up with his very own strategy to vault the language barrier.
Aeroplane. Air-o-plane.
Samolot.
I had to learn some Polish.
Samolot.
I went round the aircraft giving English names for the various parts and getting the Polish in return.
Wing.
Skrzydła.
Shid.
Skrzydło.
Gradually, I worked out a complete procedure in Polish and had it all written down phonetically on my knee pad. It worked very well and amused the Poles a lot.
Kent?
Yes.
No. Kentowski. Kentowski.
Just one more chance.
Despite Kentowski's efforts, the Poles were increasingly frustrated.
Each night I say a little prayer for.
It was almost a year since they'd fled Poland. But instead of flying fighters, the British commander Kellett had them training on bicycles.
Poles wanted to go to battle straight away, and Kellett didn't want to allow it until they were ready to cope with the radio communications and so forth.
Zumbach was starting to doubt he would ever get back in the war.
Child's play. If the British are wasting so much time with their childish exercises, when all of us have already won ours, how long is it going to take them to train up their young recruits from scratch? And will I eventually get an enemy in my sights before he won the war?
You man, stop that!
We were all very, very eager to get on with flying, but we had to wait, so we were a bit sort of frustrated.
Listen, you're here to train for battle with the Germans and not to fool around and argue with each other.
So when exactly will my men start training in hurricanes?
Witold Urbanowicz was a legendary Polish flying instructor, desperate to get his pilots back in action.
I brought my cadets from Poland through Romania, Syria and France.
I don't want people crashing around the sky until they understand what they're being told to do.
My men did not come all this way to sit around learning English.
There's nothing more that we can show the Poles on trainers.
Very well. Have the squadron proceed to operational training on hurricanes.
The Poles of 303 were finally back in the air. But before they could fight the Germans, they had to learn to fly in formation, the British way.
Perhaps the training period was unnecessarily prolonged, and this certainly irked the Pole, but we still had to be quite sure they knew how we operated.
Back home, the Poles had flown planes with fixed undercarriages. In a British fighter, they had to remember to lower the wheels before landing. Not all of them did.
We had several aircraft landed with the undercarriage retracted. One of these was put down by Sergeant František.
Stand to attention, František.
And I tore him off a first-class strip.
Do you have any idea of the damage you've just caused?
He didn't know what I was saying, but he knew he had to answer in a foreign tongue and kept repeating.
Oui, mon commandant.
Among some of the things I said to him was,
how in hell do you think you're going to fight the Germans if you can't even fly the ruddy aeroplanes?
Oui, mon commandant.
Go on. Go.
What Kent didn't know was that Joseph František had already shot down 11 German aircraft in France.
Dismissed.
But František would soon show Kent exactly what he was capable of.